You are listening to Co-Create Your Life. In this podcast, we delve deep into the law of attraction, dispel common misconceptions, and give our listeners the tools they need to build a magical, purposeful existence in their everyday lives. Reclaim the creative power you already possess and join us at cocreationcoaching.org/create. That's cocreationcoaching.org/create.
Welcome to Co-Create Your Life. This is episode 36. Should you dig up your subconscious resistance? I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And so in today's podcast, we're talking about an issue that I think a lot of people have some misconception about. And so I want to address that today. And that is specifically how you should deal with subconscious resistance, whether you should be digging it up and trying to get all of it up and out of there and released, or what you should do. So before we go into that, just an announcement. If you'd like to see the show notes for this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create036. And if you'd like to ask a question that we can answer on this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ask. So again, today we're talking about resistance. And resistance, I think, is the bane of most people who are using the law of attraction. Really, anyone who's trying to get any result from the law of attraction or any goal in life at all, even if they don't know it's resistance that's blocking them, that's what it really is. So resistance is a huge topic. And I notice a lot of people are doing exactly what I'm saying, is they're going in there and saying, okay, I have to dig up all the resistance in my subconscious mind and get it out of there, because if I don't, then it will keep attracting things like it, right? That's sort of the belief there is. So is that really true? And, what should be the approach that you take? So I want to talk about two different ways of looking at the law of attraction and how it really works. So the first way is, I guess you could call it subconscious centered around the subconscious. Mm. And, in this mode, we have all these beliefs in the subconscious mind that go back to childhood. And all of these beliefs are influencing what kind of things we're getting in life. Okay, even things we may not even be aware of. So, if you have beliefs about money, if you have beliefs about relationships, if you have beliefs about health, whatever it might be, or even beliefs about success or anything general like that, if you have beliefs in your subconscious mind that you're not aware of, then, the belief goes that it could be creating for you. And so people will try to go through, let's say, hypnosis. People will try to do subliminal meditations or whatever.
Subliminal paraliminals, I think.
Paraliminals is a subset of that. That's a specific brand. But subliminals, I've just heard of, superliminals or something?
Oh, super paraliminals.
No, I think just say it's superliminals. I don't think there's para in it. I think we're just adding that. Anyway, people go to these methods to try to program their subconscious mind. Now, is that really effective? That's, again, what the first viewpoint of the law of attraction is that there's all these beliefs in your subconscious mind, and if you don't go digging them out, then it's going to keep creating for you. Now, I've gone, and anyone who's been on my blog for more than a year or so will know kind of my journey on this, because I've sort of gone back and forth on this issue. Now, I will tell you, just for a bit of a story, that when I first came to the law of attraction, Abraham Hicks was one of the first teachers I studied. And I was coming from an NLP and hypnotherapy background. And I use that kind of loosely because I was getting trained in hypnotherapy. I never quite finished that training. And I remember one of my first big debates with people into Abraham Hicks on the Abraham Forum was about the subconscious mind, because Abraham outright says, not that it doesn't exist, but that it doesn't matter. Okay? And that's a huge claim, because if you read, let's say Joseph Murphy, or I've been reading this book, actually I haven't read it for a while because it's very dense, but there's this book, 3 Magic Words, and it's all about the power of your subconscious mind, and all these other authors who talk about your subconscious mind and how it's central to manifesting. And then you have Abraham who says, oh no, it doesn't actually matter, it doesn't create for you. And even later on, I would come into the Sedona method and the release technique, where I studied, Lester Levinson, and he said that life is a reflection of the totality of your thinking, including all your subconscious stuff. So it's almost vital that you dig it all up and release it. So anyway, when I first came to the law of attraction, I was on the Abraham Forum, and I remember debating about the subconscious thing and saying, to me, it was like just obvious. It had to play a huge role in all of this. And, you had to program it and all that kind of stuff. And it really frustrated me.
It was your sacred cow.
It was my sacred cow. It really, really frustrated me that people were like, no, it doesn't matter. And actually, I was surprised. I just learned this recently. One of the moderators in that forum actually knew, or at least met and was acquainted with, Joseph Murphy. Do you know Joseph Murphy? Do you know who he is, Christine? He wrote...
Don't, but did he write Mind Power in the 21st Century?
No, that's John Kehoe. No, Joseph Murphy wrote...
Or The Power of the Subconscious Mind,
Power
maybe?
Of the Subconscious Mind.
Oh, I'm getting them confused. Whoops.
Yeah, well...
I knew in my head, though,
right.
I think.
Oh, sure.
I don't like you.
Good, okay. Anyway. So... that was my big thing. Like, I remember arguing about that. And then over,
And I, came from a mental health background. I majored in mental health. So I readily agreed with you that the subconscious mind was very important. Remember?
Yeah, I do. Because it definitely, coming from a psychological background, it seems very important.
Exactly.
So... again, over the following, it's been almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in July since I really started into the law of attraction. And I've gone back and forth on this issue several times. Now, I will tell you, I go by personal experience. You can give me all the studies out there you want, but I go by my personal experience as to what works and what doesn't. And here's what I will tell you. When I've really persisted and committed myself to a program of clearing out the subconscious mind, I did this in a few ways. I used EFT. Actually, Christine hates EFT.
It hurts me physically.
It gives her a headache. My favorite was Faster EFT. I really liked Faster EFT. I used that. I used the Sedona method / the release technique was one of my big ones. I think those were the major 2, I guess technically 3, but techniques.
Sedona method. Oh, you said that.
Release technique and EFT / Faster EFT.
No, and the Sedona method.
Yeah, I said that, yeah.
Oh,
Sedona method, release technique, EFT, Faster EFT. So I guess technically 4, but a lot of them are kind of grouped into...
yeah.
Whatever. So anyway, those are my main methods. And I remember, let me first mention Faster EFT and EFT. And this was, I don't remember how long, maybe 2 years ago.
I think it was like 2015. It was like...
It might have been 2015, yeah.
Yeah, it was, because a friend of mine had just talked to me about it. About regular EFT, and I told you about it.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, so I was using EFT / Faster EFT. And I remember, the guy who does Faster EFT, his name's Robert something, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think
you're right. He seems totally convinced that this thing is the key to all happiness and getting rid of all these issues and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, So I started trying it out. And I even got a few sessions with a Faster EFT practitioner. I don't know if you remember that, Christine.
No, I don't.
Really? Yeah, I don't remember her name now.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. She did kind of a different sort of version of it where it's like you use both hands. It was supposed to be like, it was supposed to confuse your brain so it kind of kick it in. Well, anyway, so I observed that as I used it, I gave it a good while, like several weeks of constant use, things got worse. And you could say, oh, sometimes things get worse before they get better, but things got worse. That's all I knew. Things got worse. And so I persisted in it for a while, and I even posted on their forum, like, hey, I'm using this and it's getting worse. And now, I know from a law of attraction perspective why that is. It's because when we're doing this kind of thing, and I know EFT users will hate me for this, but we're focusing on the problem that we're trying to clear. Okay? And focusing on the problem is going to make it bigger. So things just got worse when I did it. I'd maybe feel temporary relief, but in the long run, it got worse. Now, later on in 2016, I came across the release technique and the Sedona method. And that was very similar. It was you were supposed to feel into, okay, think about your goal, feel if there's any resistant energy there. If there is, then let it go and repeat. Okay? Until there's nothing left and you just feel pure peace about your goal. That's the method you're supposed to use. And again, people who practice these techniques will probably hate me for saying this, but I'm not going to say things got worse, but I'm going to say that nothing happened. Okay? I'm going to say that I practiced it for a good period of time and I was stagnant. Nothing changed on the outside, and there was always more stuff. And I know people who practice the release technique, the Sedona method, for hours a day, which I have, I'm sorry, better things to be doing. They would practice it for hours every day. That would be their thing. And it's just, it became a kind of emotional roller coaster because you access these really deep emotions and then you release it. So you feel kind of good. And then you go back into the deep emotions and you release it. It's this emotional roller coaster. I'm like, I can't do this, but nothing changed on the outside when I purely relied on that technique. And not only did nothing change, but also there was never an end to the resistance. All right. There was always, when I went looking for, is there any more resistance here? I always found something. It might have been just a shred of resistance, but they said you have to release all of it until there's nothing left. And so I'd always find something. I'd be releasing for weeks on a single goal, and there's just always something left. And then, like I said, just some of the techniques I hated, like advantages and disadvantages, because there's always, it could take an hour just to go through advantages and disadvantages on one issue. And it just really energetically blocked me in a lot of ways. I just
it's almost
felt
too
that.
It's too hard. It's too complicated.
Right. So, and with any of these, you're going to have those people who swear by it and who say they got all these results from it. And, I'm just sharing my personal experience. And I think that as an NLP practitioner, I'm master practitioner NLP, I know, and this is what I was told in training, it was 3 years ago now, I went through NLP training, and they said people who are successful, more often than not, don't know why they're successful. They'll tell you it's because of this, but it was actually something else they were doing. And so NLP is all about modeling success, why people are successful. So I take testimonials with a huge grain of salt because you can look at anything and, oh, I succeeded. I got $1 million by doing this. And you know what I mean? But when I practiced it, and I went to all the release technique calls, I went to a whole bunch of, I paid like hundreds of dollars on different classes and events from them. And it just didn't do what I was expecting. Okay. So that's my thing. That's my experience, is that when you're doing this kind of thing where you're focusing on trying to get all the resistance up, number one, it doesn't seem to actually accomplish anything. And sometimes it may get worse. And number two, it never ends. Okay, so I know clients or people I work with in different groups, who will say, oh, I had this wonderful realization. I had this limiting belief from when I was a child. And I say, okay, what's the practical result from that? What did that actually change? Or is it just mental stuff, mind stuff? What's the benefit of that realization. Okay. And I'm a very practical person, which Christine doesn't always like. Right? But, you might go back and realize this huge, like, deep belief that you used to have or whatever. And it's like, well, what's the value in that? What does it actually accomplish?
But that doesn't mean
And,
that if it doesn't come up by
well,
itself.
right. And I'm going to talk about that.
Right.
And actually, the reason I'm doing this, I promised a client I would discuss this topic because she came to me saying, with this belief that she had to dig into her problems and try to find everything, the root of everything, and figure out why it was happening. And I said, you don't have to do any of that, right? She's like, oh, I've always been an analyzer. I always try to figure out why it's happening. And so she got kind of angry at one of my posts, my most recent post for this
Yeah.
podcast, because she took it to mean she had to do even more digging. I'm like, I wasn't saying that, right? I'm just saying you have to feel better. I'm not saying you have to dig into your problems and try to figure them out and blah, 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 blah. And she was honestly, I think, genuinely surprised by that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast on this. So that's the first approach. And again, I've gone back and forth on this, but in my opinion, in my experience, it doesn't work. And it may make things worse. So,
because it's like you're controlling what the universe is trying to do. Because it's like you're going, okay, I'm going to take over and I'm going to find the stuff that's bothering me.
right.
Not let the universe say, okay, this is what you have to work on.
Right.
There's a difference. It's either the you approach, or the higher self approach.
Yeah. And we as human beings have a tendency when we see a problem to try to fix it.
Exactly.
Into fix it mode. Let me fix this problem. Let me dig up all the beliefs that support this problem and get it all fixed up, and so I can get all the results I want to get, all the success I want to get. That doesn't work. So, what's the other approach? What's the other perspective here that I think does work? And it's basically a vibrational centric approach. It's all about your vibration that you're going out there with. Now, the important thing here is that, some people will say, well, your vibration's set by all the stuff in your subconscious mind. Here's the thing. I kind of had this realization recently. I have a love-hate relationship with Abraham. I kind of go back and forth with him. But what's been happening over the last 6 months or so is I love them, and then I kind of, come across another teacher or resource, and then I hate Abraham because of this or that, and then I come back and I realize, wait, they were saying that all along, and I just missed it. That's actually what they were saying. When you actually dig into the terminology, there was no disagreement. And then I hate them again, and I come back and see even deeper. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these levels to it when you really look into it that sometimes you don't see. So my thing was, how can you not see the subconscious mind is important and blah, blah, blah. Well, their perspective, which it just kind of hit me the other day. And now anytime I say this, Christine's like, well, duh, that's obvious. But I'm like, it's only obvious because I'm explaining it from my new understanding. It's like, yeah, you got to understand, like, Abraham has been doing this stuff for 30 years. And so it's sort of like walking into a library and saying, here you go, here's where you get started, and not having really a step-by-step. It's like, there's so much material.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they do workshops. They have 30 some workshops a year, and they're constantly evolving in how they're describing things. So it's like, you can just kind of pick up from anywhere, but it's sort of, you don't have all that background. Right. Anyway, so the understanding I came to was that basically the reason that, and this is what they've said all along, the reason that the subconscious mind isn't really important in this way. Now, I'm not saying it's not important at all, but the reason it's not important in this way is because, which this is what I've always said, for something to create in your reality, for something to influence your reality, it has to have an emotional reaction. And if it has an emotional reaction, it's conscious. It's there. Now, you might not be 100% aware, but that's just your own lack of self-awareness. But if there's an emotional reaction, it's out there in the open. It's there. You're reacting to something. And so it's not subconscious. It's conscious, right? Now, it might be a pattern, right? It might be a habit of belief. Their definition of a belief is a thought that you just keep thinking, right? So it might be a belief that, a pattern, a way of thinking that has momentum behind it. But if it has an emotional reaction, then it's conscious. It has to be. And if it's subconscious, if it's something that doesn't trigger you emotionally, if it's lying dormant, it's not creating for you. And their term for that is kind of an inactive vibration. Active vibration versus inactive.
It kind of reminds me of, have you ever heard of the people that have had like diseases dormant for like 30 years?
Oh, sure.
And then all of a sudden, boom, it just hits them like out of nowhere. Maybe they
Right.
ate something to trigger it or something. I saw it on Mystery Diagnosis one time.
Right.
They were hurt, or something happened to them like 30 years ago. And it was the exact events that woke it up again.
Right.
It's just interesting.
Well, it's like this. So let's say, you start working on relationships and you haven't really touched the topic much before, or maybe you're in a new context and it triggers new beliefs. And you say, oh, those beliefs are subconscious. They were just inactive. They were there, but they weren't creating for you until you touched upon that subject. And then now they're very super duper conscious and very active. Because if it's creating an emotional reaction in you, then it's conscious. That's as simple as it gets, right? Now, I think the difference is purely in terminology, because what some people would call subconscious is the pattern of belief or the habit of thinking. They would call that subconscious. But Abraham says that, in their terminology, it's not subconscious because it's still conscious. It's easy to focus in that way because we've done it so long. Okay. Now, whether that's subconscious or not subconscious, it doesn't matter. We have to really get to terminology and get to come to some agreement on terminology. So what they mean by subconscious is something that we're not aware of, that's lying dormant somewhere in our mind. And they're saying as long as it's lying dormant, it's not active, it's not creating. So that means that if you have this deep, dark belief from 30 years ago, unless it's actively creating an emotion in you right now, it doesn't matter. Now, as Christine was getting to earlier, if it comes up, then it matters, and then it's active, and then you know about it. So the great thing about the law of attraction is that it brings up the exact resistance we need to work on. So if, let's say, you're working on money, let's say you're self-employed and trying to grow clients. Okay, that came out weird. Clients aren't plants. Try to get more clients. Sorry, just the imagery came in my head.
What did you say? Oh, grow clients.
Trying to grow clients. And I just imagine planting little client seeds. Anyway.
They grow on trees, right?
Yeah.
Clients grow on trees.
Yeah.
They're called clementines.
Okay, that's too much. Anyway.
Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Sorry.
Anyway, I have a whole garden full of clients. Anyway, if you're self-employed and you're trying to grow your number of clients, then it might trigger a belief like, and I know this has happened to me before, I can't support myself being self-employed. That's a very common belief for self-employed people. And so that may, let's say you worked in the corporate world for 10, 20, 30 years prior to this. That belief was there, but it was dormant. It was inactive. But when you went and become self-employed, and let's say you quit your job, that's what I did last year, then suddenly this comes up to the surface. It's right there in the forefront. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't support myself. Like, well, where did that come from? Let's say you've never had problems financially, but that was in the context of a corporate job. And now that you're trying to be self-employed, then now you're in a different context and your beliefs aren't supporting it. But it doesn't mean that they're subconscious. They are very, very, very conscious. and you have a choice of what to do with them. So the thing is that when you have a goal, let's say your goal is to get more clients or to support yourself financially as a self-employed business owner, then as you're working on that goal, that resistance has to come to the forefront, okay? Because your vibration on the subject is not pure. It's not 100% on the positive side, right? So it's as you speed up that momentum, that resistance becomes evident. It becomes obvious. And so you say, oh, look, this is what I'm thinking. And so now I have to work on this. So I always tell clients, resistance will happen, but don't go looking for it. It will come to you. Don't go to it. Okay? And it's true. You know, especially when I'm coaching someone, and someone just said this to me recently, they're like, I feel like so much energy moves when we're coaching because then I have tons of resistance the next day. I'm like, yeah, we split up energy, you know? And it's all in how you deal with the fallout of that. That's very common. So that's, you know, my main suggestion to people is let the resistance come to you. It will come. Don't deny it. That's sort of just a form of self-deception, which is very common in the LOA community. But, you know, recognize the resistance that's there. Don't go looking for it. That's super important. Don't go looking for it. So one of the things, you know, I mentioned before that when I went looking for the resistance, when I tried to dig all of it up, things got worse and it never ended. Now, the reason is actually, there's one reason for both of those things happening. So, from a subconscious centered point of view, we have a subconscious mind with all these deep, dark beliefs buried deep in it that we have to dig up and release so that we can be successful, right? That's how that works. But how, you know, in the other point of view, which I resonate more with because it has worked for me, this resistance. So you're always attracting, okay? And one thing I really like that Abraham says is that every thought you've ever thought still exists. It's just they're thought forms. Every thought anyone has ever thought still exists on some vibrational plane, on some vibrational level. Angry thoughts hang out in the anger vibration, and, you know, joyful thoughts hang out in the joyful vibration. So if you're in an anger, a vibration of anger or a vibration of fear, you're going to get thoughts that match that. You're going to get angry thoughts or fearful thoughts. It doesn't, so here's what I want to tell you. It doesn't mean that those angry or fearful thoughts were hanging out in your subconscious mind just waiting for you to get to that vibration or something. That could be the case. But what's also possible is that those were thought forms hanging out on that vibrational plane, and when you were a match, they came to you. There was a story, and I wish I remembered all the details, but I don't. But there was a story Abraham used to tell quite a while ago about a woman. Actually, I don't remember if it's a man or a woman, so we're just going to say they. The person who suddenly became very afraid of, I think it was bridges. And said, I don't know why I'm afraid of bridges, although I've never been afraid of bridges. And they thought maybe it's a subconscious thing, maybe it's a past life thing. Well, I think, again, I don't remember all the details, but I think it came to pass that before this fear started, their home was burglarized. Yeah, and so they were in a very insecure place. And so Abraham said, you know, when you're, let's say, crossing a bridge, there's lots of people who, let's say, are afraid of bridges. And now in your more insecure place, you're attracting those thought forms of being afraid of bridges. Do you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily like it was stuck in your subconscious somewhere and now it's active. It's possible that these are thought forms just sort of floating around and you became a match to them. And so now they're active. They're, you know, magnetized towards you. Does that make sense to you, Christine?
It does. I've never thought about that. You know, I've never heard of that kind of thing happening. I mean, I've heard of it happening if you're in a car accident and you're afraid of cars. Duh. You know.
Right.
But I've never heard of, you're just afraid of something random.
Well, it's sort
because
of like
something else happened.
Right. Oh, it's. I think it can definitely happen. It's sort of one of the things Byron Katie says is there are no original. I don't agree with this, but the point is valid. There are no original thoughts. Any fear that's out there has already been feared, for example.
That's true.
So if you are in that fearful vibration, now suddenly you're afraid of this, and you're afraid of that, and you're afraid of that, and you're afraid of that, and you're afraid of
Look
that.
at anxious people, like people who have anxiety
Exactly.
really bad, and they have irrational fears.
Right.
Just for no reason.
Right.
That's probably why.
Exactly. Like, for example, I don't know those who are listening to my stuff, I may or may not know this. I returned to my programming job in March of this year. Now, just as a brief history, I worked there April 10th of last year until the end of October. And when I first joined that job, I absolutely adored it. And Christine remembers, I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. It was awesome. Okay? And over time, after about 3 months, I started business coaching with a coach, joined a 6-month program with her, and it got it in my head that I should, if I'm doing my business, I should be doing my business, and that's what I should be doing, and not this other programming stuff. And all of a sudden, I hated my job. Now, nothing changed with the job. Nothing. The people were the same. The work was the same. Everything was the same. And prior to this, I had glowing reviews from my, I would say review, whatever, however you want to put that, but my coworkers were, telling my boss how it was good to work with me, and he said there was nothing to complain about. But after I got it in my head that I hated this job, and I didn't try to. I didn't go out and say, I'm going to hate my job. It just started happening because of a conclusion I came to. So then, that's active in my vibration. And then I start finding more and more reasons to hate it. And then I get more stressed. And then I figure, oh, I know the perfect action to take. Number one, I'll go part-time, which I did, which was fine. But then in October, I said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll quit. I don't like this situation, so I'll quit. I'll take the action of quitting. Now, that was a stupid decision, because guess what happens if you take an action from a vibrational place of lack? You don't fix it. I gained some short-term relief, but it didn't fix anything. An action from a place of lack just gets more of that same vibration, right? Or an action from a place of dislike or whatever, of resistance, just gets more of that same thing. It's a magnifier. It doesn't improve vibration, right? So obviously it didn't work. So I went back this year, and it's just been total turnaround. But anyway, my point is that was all this stuff, all this hatred of the job and stuff, was that in my subconscious mind? Some of it. I certainly had resistance about jobs in the past, but it's just something that started to attract to me as I matched that vibration. So, I kept getting more and more and more and more and more of that thing. So what happens is when you go digging for resistance, whatever you focus on, you tune your vibration to. You become a match to. You make it bigger. So when you're going looking for this resistance and saying, oh, let me dig up all these beliefs, you have to experience the belief to release it, and you're focusing on resistance. And what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get more resistance. You're going to get more like that thing, and that thing may or may not have been in your subconscious mind, but it will certainly be attracted to you. So there's never, one of the things Abraham says is you can never get to the bottom of a problem, because you will just create more problem and create more problem and create more problem. You can never get to the bottom of it, because that's not how you get to happiness. You don't get there by trying to solve a problem or by trying to dig up all the resistance. It doesn't work. You just get more of whatever you're focusing on.
I used to do inner healing for, clients, like where I would help them go to the root of the issue. Well, that was a mistake. And especially there was this one person that no matter what I did, it got worse and worse and worse. So now when I work with people, I just let whatever come up, and we don't try to find the root unless it comes up.
Oh yeah, I've had clients.
But I don't dig.
I've had clients ask me, "Can we go into childhood?" I'm like, I have no interest in doing that. Whatever needs to come up will come up in the present moment. I'm not going to go looking for stuff. It's not. I have no interest in it. It's. I'm sorry, boring to me. It's just I'm not interested in that. That's not the kind of work I do. I'm focused on the future. what you want to create in the future. I'm not focused on trying to fix the past. As they say, your point of power is in the present, right? So
unless something from the past does influence, and then that'll come
but
up itself.
it'll come up, and then we say, oh, this is what's going on, and let's release that. Let's find a way to soothe that. But going and looking for all this stuff, it's
just self-sabotage. It's
go
like
to a
if you cut
counselor.
yourself.
Go to a counselor if you want to do that work. That's not my work as a coach. So again, that's my experience, and it goes back to the law of attraction can work quickly. It doesn't have to take months or years. And if you think you're going to possibly dig up all the stuff that you could possibly find wrong about your situation or about anything you've ever believed, that's a project that's going to take years, and it's really never going to be over, right? So you can dig and dig and dig about money and whatever or about relationships or whatnot for 6 months, 9 months, for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, and you might have had a lot of realizations, but your life won't get any better. It might get worse because you're focused on all the stuff that you're bringing up, and you're not focused on what you're trying to create. That's been my experience. That's been what I've seen in my life, what I've seen in my clients' lives. It just doesn't work. If you want to create something, there's only one way to go about doing it. You feel better about what is. Any thoughts, any habitual thoughts you have, you persistently choose a different way of thinking. You persistently soothe that and feel better about it and raise your vibration and focus in the direction you want to go. That's what you do. That's the way to go about it. You focus on what you want to create, and it happens really quickly most times. There's no reason it has to take a long time. So again, I'm not a fan of digging into all the problems and things like it. Just that's not why we're here, to spend hours a day trying to free up all this subconscious stuff. That's not why you're here. You're here to be excited. You're here to be inspired. You're here to live your passion. You're here to create what you want to create. And that's what you should be focused on for the best results. That's what you live for. That's what you came here for. So I think that was a really good discussion. Hopefully that makes sense. I might have ruffled some feathers with that.
Oh yeah, you probably did. It was awesome.
I'm good at that though. But I invite you, if your feathers were ruffled by this, I invite you to really look at the practical results. If you're a digger, if you're a digger for problems, ask yourself what it's actually done for you. But at the end of the day, beyond all the realizations and all the things that you maybe have thought of, what has it actually done for, say, your level of happiness and for your actual practical results in life? Okay, that's the thing to ask yourself. So I just want you to keep an open mind. And again, test all this. I've been testing this stuff for 3 years. And I'm coming at you from 3 years of experience saying this is what I've experienced. And I've seen it to be true for myself and for my clients. So it's not just one person. But test it for yourself and see what works. That's the only way you're ever going to know. So I hope that this helped you and gave you some insights as to what may be going on for you. But if you would like, again, to see the show notes for this podcast, you can go to co-creationcoaching.org/create036. And if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes or rate or review this podcast, you can go to co-creationcoaching.org/create-iTunes is one word. So I thank you for listening. The plan
this
right
was
now,
fun.
It was fun. The plan right now was we're going to try to do this every 2 weeks. I've been trying to, so I'm horrible with schedules, so don't really listen to me. But the plan,
we're going to try.
The plan is every 2 weeks. I'm going to try to do a blog post and then a podcast and alternate every week. So that's the plan. So be looking out for us in 2 weeks, or come to the blog and next week then. So hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks for another podcast. But regardless, I thank you for listening. And once again, I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And as always, anything is possible.